Many people believe that African countries aren't exactly on the forefront when it comes to innovation in armored warfare. It's not 100% true, of course, but most powers of the region do rely on older tanks and IFVs. Not so South Africa. This nation has a great many locally built high-tech vehicles that we're going to discuss today. South Africa made the foray into the world of tank building during World War II, while the country was still a British dominion. The country supplied troops and armour to the British, and South Africans fought at El Alamein, participated in the siege of Tobruk, and even made it to the European theatre of war. During that period, they created one of their first domestically produced combat vehicles, a reconnaissance armoured car, built on the chassis of the Marmon Harrington truck. In War Thunder, there are two prototypes of the Mark VI variant of this vehicle, fitted with the 2-pounder and 6-pounder guns, respectively. When South Africa became an independent republic in 1961, the country had two big problems to deal with: the conflict in Namibia and the socialist threat of Angola. South African military doctrine heavily favoured a war of manoeuvre and was centred around the independent deployment of mechanised infantry. As such, the military needed a highly mobile, reliable IFV. There were two companies responsible for the development of this vehicle: the German Springfield Büssing and the local Sandock Austral. The first variants of the new infantry fighting vehicle, built on a modified MAN truck chassis, were ready by the end of the 1960s, and soon it was tested in combat against the Angolan UNITA forces. The new IFV was called Ratel, like the honey badger living in Africa. This vehicle was often escorted by the Eland 90 light armoured cars in combat. The defining traits of the Ratel were its excellent mobility and modern armament, a 20mm autocannon or a 90mm gun. The IFV was in production until 1978, and there were several other vehicles based on its design, including the ZT3A2 ATGM carrier. Another well-known South African vehicle is the OliphantMBT, taking its Afrikaans name from the African elephant. For a few decades, South Africa mostly relied on a few hundred Centurion Mark IIIs, purchased from the British in the mid-1950s. By the 1970s, though, those tanks were already pretty outdated, and so the engineers of the company known today as Ruikan OMC were given a task of substantially upgrading them. The tank received a new L7 cannon, modern optics, a powerful engine, and a new transmission adopted from the M60 pattern. As it was drastically different from the original tank, it received its own name, Oliphant. The new MBT was first tested in combat in 1987 against Angolan T-55s. Oliphants had no difficulty destroying enemy armor and proved to have good enough survivability, at least in this specific matchup. In 2003, after quite a few years in service, the MBT was upgraded to the Mark II standard. It received a computerized fire control system, thermal sights, and a layer of composite armor. Despite the fact that deep inside it's still a Centurion, a tank developed during World War II, that is, the modern Oliphant is certainly a force to be reckoned with, especially if you make the mistake of underestimating it. When it was time to retire the Eland armoured car, South African engineers introduced the iconic Ruikan, a wheeled tank named after the caracal, a type of African wildcat. There were several different prototypes built using different hulls. For example, the Concept 3 variant combined a hull of the Saracen APC with a gun from a Comet tank. It wasn't just local defense contractors that were trying their hand at designing a new armored vehicle, though. For example, a West German engineering firm, Thyssen-Henschel, suggested a heavy-class vehicle carrying a 105mm cannon. In the end, the decision was made to go for a vehicle in an 8x8 configuration with a 76mm main gun turret. The production vehicle, as well as derivative models, had excellent mobility. On a good road, the Ruikan can reach the speed of up to 120 kph. The design proved to be so successful that several additional variants were suggested, including a Ruikan with a 105mm gun, a version with a new turret to incorporate other types of armaments, and a self-propelled anti-aircraft gun. But the most ambitious South African project available in the game is waiting for you at rank 7 of the Ground Forces tech tree. It's the Tank Technology Demonstrator, or TTD for short. Closer to the end of the Cold War, South African engineers wanted to make an indigenous second-generation MBT. The project was assigned to a team of experienced engineers at Roimish ONC and Littleton Engineering Works. This collaboration resulted in the creation of a vehicle with good mobility and multiple layers of spaced armor, a vehicle which could also be fitted with modern guns. This prototype wasn't as technologically advanced as the best of contemporary Western MBTs, but it was a really good tank. Unfortunately, only a single prototype vehicle was built, and the TTD never went into service due to political reasons. It doesn't mean that defense companies of South Africa have stopped producing or upgrading combat vehicles, though. No, on the contrary. Some of these contractors have joint projects with British companies like BAE Systems. Locally built tanks, IFVs and other types of vehicles are employed by the South African National Defence Force. You can see them out in the field. And obviously on the battlefields of War Thunder. Do you enjoy using them? Have we mentioned any of your favorites? Please tell us in the comments below. We'd love to hear from you.